Good day and welcome to another episode of Newsroom by the Manila Times. For this episode, we will be discussing the potential of the high-value crops industry in the Philippines in boosting economic growth. So for our resource person for today, we will be having Undersecretary Cheryl Caballero from the Department of Agriculture High-Value Crop Development Program. So for today, I hope that all of you will be able to realize that besides rice, there is more potential in high value crops. So with me is Janine Alexis Miguel, our reporter who covers the trade and agriculture beat, and yours truly, Conrad Carino, Special Sections Editor.
Magandang hapon po, Conrad, at sa ating mga kasamahan, the partners and the viewers of Manila Times. Thank you for the invitation.
First of all, please give us a situation on the country's high-value crop industry.
Okay, the Philippines has always been regarded as one of the sources of coconuts. I think we still have that record of being the country that has the highest number of standing trees. So for the high-value crops, coconut is always an export winner for the country. Second is in terms of the opportunity still for our bananas. These are basically exports from the multinational companies and carried on also by smallholder banana farmers. So that is in our export list. There are also areas wherein we are working on for additional crops that includes pineapple, which is another export, mostly by multinational companies to various parts of the country. We have also increasing support to reestablish our export for mangoes now that we're able to again have a market access in Australia. And several companies from the Philippines are already exporting mangoes in Australia, as well as other ASEAN countries where we can do value addition for banana. So there are, and mangoes, of course. So what the high value crops does is to look at the export potential from developing the fresh produce, and at the same time looking at ways to do value addition so we can address the post-harvest losses and additional revenue when it comes to adding value to a raw product, which is normally the exports that we have as of now.
Ma'am Yusek, early in line po with the current crop situation that you've mentioned, Agriculture Secretary Chu Laurel has allotted 7 billion for crop diversification. So how would the DA or your office would intend to spend this amount? Or will there be a specific crop that you will promote?
Yeah, the crop diversification component of the Rice Competitiveness Enhancement Fund, it's part of actually of the RCEF. It's an excess money from the tariff collected from the out of the tarification law. And 7 billion was actually we currently have around 700 million pesos for 2024. And in the crop diversification strategy, of course, it is other crops after rice. So for the high value crops, we are positioning those that can be planted in upland rice farming communities or rain-fed communities. So we initially are looking at mung bean and of course peanuts, which would help rejuvenate the soil or have something to improve the quality of the soil. So that is where crop diversification for legumes is a priority. Second is also to look at integration or complementation of lowland vegetables. So we are looking at the inclusion of string beans, eggplant, and in some cases where the soil is most conducive, the expansion for onion and garlic and ginger will also be integrated. So what we are doing at the High Value Crops program is to work with our regional counterparts under the DA and see what are the production practices that can be replicated or that can be strengthened and carried over in those areas that were identified by the RICE program as recipients.
Among those crops that you've mentioned, po, like string beans, eggplant, have you identified like what is the most profitable crop among those?
It varies because number one, most of the vegetables and legumes or spices rather are dependent on the whether it's rainy season or when it's dry season. So profitability comes in terms of the ability of our farmer to optimize the use of the land. So number one yan. In the case of garlic now, it's hitting like 400 pesos yata sa retail. So that can be a good area to look into considering that we only produce around 3% of that and 97% of the production comes from the Ilocos region. So we are looking at that mechanism to, encourage the planting of garlic and value addition. So it cannot compete with the imported garlic because it's much, much cheaper. But in terms of pungency and quality, that is the value proposition we are looking at for crops like that, which are not as competitive in terms of pricing, but it is much more pungent and in terms of its characteristics and quality. So again, high value crops can look at it in terms of one, our ability to address the lack of supply at the onset due to seasonality, or two, do product value addition and processing. So that is where the farmer can benefit most.
Yusek, how about exports po? Are we looking at additional crops, especially with the addition of new free trade agreements?
Yeah. There are two ways of looking at it. Of course, we have several market access and trade agreements with various countries. And for in the context of high value crops, we'd like to optimize our ability to meet and supply the needed requirements. So strategically, the ability of the country to produce and supply sustainably will boil down on the volume. So that is where we are working on in terms of production and quality planting materials. There are also other crops which are non-traditional, I would say, but are emerging and it has good potential in the market. I was in a discussion with the private sector group of in France, and they've mentioned ube, no, or the purple yam. So naka-purple si Conrad. So purple yam is something that is very endemic to us, no. It has most potential because of its quality, its color, which is a natural colorant, and it is also a natural binding agent for other ingredients. So in the case of ube, in the 1990s, I think there were projects that were supposed to develop tissue culture planting materials for ube in Bohol, cognizant of their kinampay. So I don't know, that is the white aromatic ube that they have in Bohol, no? However, as we see the products or produce of indigenous peoples, yung IP communities natin, ube is endemic to them. So as close as to in Manila, we have Pampanga, no, and Rizal. So this is a new emerging crop that can really be a big potential for export. But again, we have to address the requirements for planting material, the package of technology, and the farm practices and post-harvest that will support it. So it has to be, I would say, more focused and more systematic, so we would be able to, hit the success rate for export for these emerging commodities, of course.
You were talking about planting materials. Now, what I have observed from the agencies under the DA and other research institutes in the Philippines, we do not have any research institute for high value crops like ube. So how does the DA intend to address the issue of research and development so that we can increase the yields and quality of the high value crops you mentioned? Because from what I have seen, rice has been given the most research in the Philippines, but the other crops get very little. So how do you address that issue?
Yeah. Currently, we have to live with whatever we have because, of course, for 2025, Secretary Franny Chu Laurel actually prioritized, the production of quality planting materials. And so investments will happen in the tissue culture production, experts training, and also the ability of the Department of Agriculture to provide quality planting material by having these nurseries to complement tissue culture production, because it has to be properly coordinated. So currently, we are working with our research stations under the Department of Agriculture. So these are the Regional Integrated Agricultural Research Centers, or RIARCs. And the case in point is for potato, we have a tissue culture facility in Nomniarc, in Bukidnon. So this is where we will beef up more, support, so they can produce more planting materials for your table potatoes or your marble potatoes. Collaboration also happens with the industry partners. So I would mention a particular partner here, the Universal Robina Corporation, which has been consistently supporting our farmers with quality planting material. And this is one way also of capitalizing on their access to technologies and support, so we can enhance the regional research stations that we have, plus to beef up also the crop production centers under the, or revitalize rather, because in the past, they were not properly funded. So these are the crop production centers under the Bureau of Plant Industry. So we have, I think, around 5 of them. And of course, at the regional level, we have RIARCs in all regions. So systematically, these have to be connected and properly supported, so we can assure the farmers of a reliable and quality planting material. So that's where we are at current.
So that means you mentioned Universal Robina. So that means the DA is also open to collaboration with the private sector.
Yeah. We also have collaboration with Nestle. In fact, the planting materials and projects that they have under GIZ is located in our research stations. And we see the role of the private sector here, especially in scaling up the investments, and at the same time capturing larger market share, and making sure on our part that our farmers are mainstream in their value chain.
Janine.
Ma'am, on another matter, farmers have been, there are reports of some farmers that their crop sometimes on the issue of oversupply. So if not oversupply, there's a shortage of some crops. So how would the department address this concern?
Yeah. I think the ability of the government, particularly the department, to look at the supply and demand assessment is also dependent on the ground level data. So the ground level data also comes from the local government units. And this is where we had discussions on how to automate the reporting process. because there are report officers or the agricultural extension workers at the local level which the high value crops supports. So we provide some incentives to them in exchange of the information that they have to submit to us. So that is not 100% efficient because they are still paper-based. So improvement in terms of automation and data consolidation is what we are looking at for that level. It is also affecting the ability of the provincial and the regional and the national to consolidate data. These are operational data. These are, production data, so to speak. So that's one. So your question on how we can effectively do projections and analysis would depend on factual, verifiable information. So that's where we have to do automation and systematize the process of reporting and validation and verification. But on the side of production, this is where collaboration now with the provincial governments, the local government units, and not to mention the organized farmers organization, to collectively work in terms of developing and making sure that their SAF-DAISY or yung kanilang land use plan, there's a strategic area, strategic agriculture and fisheries development zone that has been part of the AFMA, yung Agriculture and Fisheries Modernization Act, that should be implemented. So I think the discussion there in terms of making it operational is in our policy guidance. Again, looking at the usability also of the comprehensive land use plan, CLUP, because when you do production planning, it has to be area-based. So the areas that will be defined, for example, and will be identified exclusively for coffee production or for cacao production has to be protected in terms of its use for the long term, because these are long gestating crops. So the management mechanism for production has to be understood in terms of the land use, in terms of its suitability, and also in terms of the investments that will come from the government, from the owners of the land, whether they are small farmers or big cooperatives or companies, and the continuous process of feedbacking as to market connectivity and also the demand analysis has to be part of the entire exercise to make our ability to be more proactive in terms of ensuring food self-sufficiency. So self-sufficiency is the technical term that we use when we say that it is locally available. So that's one area that we have to continuously work on. It's not a perfect mechanism, but the way that the new leadership of Secretary Franny Chulaurel is now moving on is really towards making sure that it is operational and it is realistic. Yeah.
Okay. Now, let me bring this discussion to the issue of digitalization and artificial intelligence. How will you weave in those two into the program of the Department of Agriculture when it comes to high-value crops, especially now that digitalization is, I would say, has taken root in the Philippines?
Yeah, that's a good question, because when we look at production management again, it has to be science-based and technology-driven. We are looking at ways to partner with groups that can produce sensors. And I have visited one company, Denso, Philippines, that is also a learning site with the ATI, wherein they have locally manufactured sensors. And that sensor should allow us to, have information on what are the changes in terms of the humidity, in terms of the atmospheric quality, etc., to be able to predict possibly what are the pests, that comes out during this time of the year when the soil is moist and when the temperature is so conducive to these pests. So that's one. Number two is to also be able to use this kind of technologies to automate your fertigation, your crop nutrient management, wherein the use of water is now going to be part of our management process, vis-a-vis the effective use also of non-chemical and chemical-based fertilizers. So these are information that should be readily available to our farmers, and we are on that perspective as to how we can do some modelings in our research stations, to how to work with farmer cooperators that can be part of the learning process and validation, and three, how to scale and do the large-scale implementation once the POCs and models are tested and validated.
Okay. Now, what I have observed in other countries is that there is a booming agriculture technology industry, and it covers various crops. Can you say that the program of the Department of Agriculture for high-value crops, especially now that it's getting enough funding, would give birth to this type of industry in the Philippines, like maybe in seeds or maybe in digital technology? Uh,
Yeah.
can you comment on that?
Yes, the transformational process and the direction that the new secretary is moving on and bringing us to supports our vision of a more dynamic, proactive, high-value crops development program. So it cuts across different areas of specialization, because we also have to make sure that with technology, sourcing and technology application, it is understood and implemented by the farmers at the ground level. So we're looking at grassroots-based intervention that would laymanize these technologies that are readily available. So to me, technology is just a technology if it's not used effectively. So it's just a tool. It's a tool that can be used to create changes and transformation. And so, coming from that technology managed background, I see the importance of working with people and capacitating them and enhancing them in terms of the local implementation and I would say accessibility to these technologies in their day-to-day activities. So that's where we are, and that's those kind of partnerships with technology providers, new input suppliers that would now look at crop nutrition not only as a fertilizer. So there's a difference between a fertilizer and the context of nutrition management, because when we look at the nutrition requirement of the plant, it also is connected to the nutrition that we intake from the plant as we are the consumers of that. So these are things that have to be developed and understood relative to our understanding of food production and food systems and food innovation. So we are now looking at the food innovation platform also. And this is not a solo flight of the DA, but collaboration also with the DTI, with the OST, and other agencies. DOH, in fact, we are having a partnership with DOH in terms of the food and nutrition requirements also of the hospitals and their patients. So a lot of things are on the works. Yeah.
Janine, do you have any?
Ma'am, you've mentioned food innovation. So how much potential do you think this high-value crops could offer in terms of value adding?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because like for example, calabasa, no? A lot of products were developed out of calabasa, because you've heard that in some places they just throw away if there's an excess supply. But this can be processed into what do you call this, soup, or a pulverized in pulverized form. You also have noodles, etc., that can be developed out of Calabasa. So in terms of food innovation, our Food Development Center, which used to be under the NFA, the National Food Authority, is one of the partner institution that HighValue Crops is going to work with. They have the ability to help our farmers that would go into value addition by testing their products for shelf life analysis. So that is a requirement, of course, for entrepreneurs to sell their products in the marketplace. So the shelf life also allows us, guarantees us that the food we eat is not expired. So that's one thing. So this technical assistance and what we call support for value addition is something that the Department of Agriculture is, through the HighValue Crops, is heavily focusing on. So product development, aside from farm production, is where food innovation will come in. We see the learnings and the success stories of several countries, and they have smart kitchen, no? They have innovations in those areas, and entrepreneurs can just go there and be assisted in terms of the technology that they need, no? So shelf life analysis, nutritional facts, other concoctions that can be used to market and value add is there. So the HighValue Crops now will work closely in collaboration with the Food Development Center to make sure that their scientists and food technologists will be part of the support group to develop and beef up our HighValue Crops platform.
Now let me ask naman the role of state colleges and universities. Do you have any framework or plan to get them involved into this?
Yeah. Through the Bureau of Agricultural Research, the partnership with state universities and colleges is a mechanism that has always been there. No? For high-value crops, there should be a proper direction on what specific research agenda are we going to focus on for particular crops. Like, for example, when we talk about food and nutrition, then we look at the utilization of other food, no, inputs in creating, say, a low glycemic index cracker, no, and the inclusion of adlai, for example, is one area to look into, because you can have an energy bar out of adlai plus peanuts, so things like that. And we'd like to see the research institutions, because especially those that have food technology or food science courses, to make it part of their R&D agenda. And of course, to us, if they have a POC or proof of concept, then we are open to discussions and collaborations. Yeah.
So, Janine, do you have a follow-up question? Okay. Now, ma'am, how about the role of indigenous people? You were talking about grassroots, and we know that the indigenous people are literally at the grassroots level. So how does the Department of Agriculture intend to get them involved into this all of the plans that you?
Yes.
Yes.
Just a few weeks ago, we had a collaboration meeting with 4K. 4K is Katutubo. It's an entity inside the Department of Agriculture that heavily focuses on capacity building and OD, organization development for IPs. So we are touch basing with them on the areas that they have already done several organization development work. So that makes it easier for us to work in terms of technology application, because the capacity building is already prepared. So that's how we look at partnership and collaboration. Second is to also work with Indigenous peoples group. So the one on potato, for example, are IPs from the Cordilleras. So we are looking at ways to partner them, with farmers naman from Bukidnon. So they can have exchange of knowledge, exchange of information, and maybe business to business collaboration later on, as they are going to be taught, or as they are going to engage in more proactive undertaking, commodity-wise. Yeah. So a lot of things are happening. And lastly, to work with the IP communities through NCIP or through, I think the DA also has a project on MIADP, no? The Mindanao Integrated Area Development Project for IPs. So those are the platforms available.
So you have a lot of things to do in terms of high value crops development. So my last question is, I heard that the Department of Agriculture is asking for 500 billion budget next year. Uh, can you tell me how much should high value crops be getting from that 500 billion? And what are the chances of getting that type of budget? Because I think that that's going to be the biggest budget in the history of the department.
Yes, yes. Well, we were like, our wish list was around 10 billion. But realistically, we can have around what we have now is around 2.4 billion for 2025, I guess. But to collaborate with other projects, that can be up to around 3.5 billion. So, taking cognizance on the leveraging process, wherein you leverage funds with other partner institutions, that is where high value crops is realistically working on things. So the bulk of the budget of DA though still goes for rice, no? Rice has always been a priority, but you'd be surprised that the secretary now has also focused on investments on post-harvest, because much of the losses are also attributed to post-harvest losses. So investments in terms of, for the high-value crops, of course, we're looking at dehydrators and cold storages in a big way, where the Food Terminal Incorporated can be part of. So the new, I would say, enhanced mechanism rather, is not only on increasing productivity, farm production or farm productivity. It's also addressing the losses, which is basically a big chunk of the revenues that's down the drain because of the losses that is due to spoilage, etc. And so I believe that the new enhanced fund would focus on post-harvest, addressing post-harvest losses, and improving also the mechanization component, as well as the logistics. So much of the problems during the pandemic was attributed to logistics issues. And the department now is banking on its resources, particularly its ability to mobilize goods, agricultural products through the ports that the Philippine Fisheries Development Authority and the Bureau of Fisheries, Bureau of Fisheries would be able to mobilize as well and complement those in the crops and livestock program.
So do you have any more
Ma'am,
questions?
you've mentioned logistics. So does the department have any plans on directly procuring crops from farmers and to remove the middlemen or traders?
Yeah. This is how it works. The Department of Agriculture is not mandated to buy directly from the farmers. It can only intervene to address food inflation through the FTI and through our Kadigwa platform. So that platform is now one way to bring wholesale products in Metro Manila and work with distribution channel partners under the Kadiwa platform. So that area is now going to happen, and we'd like to invite you tomorrow because tomorrow is the kick-off date for the enhanced Kadiwa mechanism. So, yes, this mechanism in terms of addressing food inflation, specifically in Metro Manila, has to be supported as well by establishing wholesale food markets through the FTI and in partnership with local government units that would have the ability to also monitor prices through the BNPP o yung bantay presyo mechanism under the Price Act.
Okay. Ma'am, thank you very much for sharing your expertise and updating us. So do you have any last things to say, ma'am?
Yeah, thank you. Again, thank you to your team for inviting us here. And we'd like to, of course, thank the management of Manila Times and your team for granting us this interview. High Value Crops is the springboard for value addition and exports development, as well as increasing our sufficiency by encouraging young farmers to take part in developing our high value crops. So it is going to be sexy for them because we are going to adopt new ways, technological innovation, that is. And we'd also like to take this opportunity to invite the young farmers there to, submit their, what you call this, pitch. Because we will be having a Young Farmers Challenge for 2024. And that encourages the young ones to look at, ideas, projects, which they may already have and which would need some funding through these contests. So, inaanyayahan po namin kayong makiugnay sa High Value Crops Development Program ng Department of Agriculture, and also to connect with our other programs that would be able to motivate our young farmers to take part in the transition and transformational goals of the country to make agriculture one of the bedrocks of our economic development.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Newsroom by the Manila Times. And we would like to thank our resource person and you, Undersecretary Cheryl Caballero, for discussing the value of the high value crop sector in the Philippines. And with me is our reporter for Trade and Agriculture, Janine Alexis Miguel, and I am Conrad Carino, Special Sections Editor. Thank you very much.